trying to get you folks to understand this is how the smoke and mirrors works. I just simply want to find out what happened to the American dream as someone who is living the American nightmare. You got to know the facts, and if we came together, we could overcome the corruption that's murdering us all.
I'm just trying to make the world aware of the truth, and I've got it.
And the information's coming at me fast and furious, so I just turned on my computer camera and decided to launch into this because I was inspired, quite frankly, by Sean the Flying Tomato White in last night's incredible performance in the Olympics. So I'm going to try to I am a snowboarder. I'm going to try to nail this run like Shaun White did in the half pipe and link together a bunch of incredible information. Hopefully it's all going to flow the way it is in my mind. So I'm coming at this actually because I've been bazookaed this morning by incredible information that I am in the middle of, and I need to try to connect the dots of all of this stuff, because if I can somehow elevate what it is that we have on our end, it's going to match brilliantly with what important people are talking about out there that I appreciate and follow. And there were some revelations this morning that have really tied it all together for me. So the first thing that I want to talk about is Jamie Dimon is actually supposedly in the crosshairs of Senator Sherrod Brown and Senator Warren, because they're looking and investigating into Chase once again for robo-signing lawsuits against customers that were in credit card default or maybe beyond. I'm not sure what all the circumstances are, but robo-signing certainly came at me directly because of what I know what happened in the robo-signing scandal, not scandal, madness, criminality, everything that it did, in the housing collapse. But the point about Jamie Dimon, and what I want you guys to kind of think about this throughout what I'm going to try to convey, is that Jamie Dimon and Chase has been convicted 5 times in the last, I think, 6 years for felonies that were deferred prosecutions, including a RICO conviction that took place in the heavy metals market. And the magnitude of, supposedly this investigation, once again, in all the noise and the madness with the insurrection of Donald Trump, destroying documents and all of the other, madness that comes out of that, the mainstream doesn't understand that Jamie Dimon is literally the guy who runs the United States. And I want to plant that seed for a second, because I'm aware, and I have access to information, of Senator Sherrod Brown in 2014-ish, playing a role, I think, and I think he's one of the good guys, for doing what he had to do to try to stabilize the United States in the aftermath of the great financial crisis, which meant that there were certain things that could have been incredibly damaging to the Democratic Party that they decided to move out of the space, while they were also initiating things that were very important at the time, like the Brown-Vitter Act, which was really to try to break up the too-big-to-fail banks and to support independent banks across the country. There's a lot of things that didn't happen as a result of that. It didn't lead to a new Glass-Steagall Act. But here we are again. And one of my biggest criticisms of the Democrats, particularly Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Sherrod Brown, is that we have seen time and time again, and this goes to Maxine Waters, and everything that's involved with any sort of investigations into the financial system, that always come up short. And it always appears to me, by the way, to happen in and around a time where, let's just say, funding for the Democratic Party is incredibly important because of the midterm elections, and then moving into the 2024 presidential election and everything that intertwines with the financial system and funding, of course, for the Democratic Party. So just for instance, right, if you were somebody as professional, somebody who was on it, somebody who knew all of the details of what could actually be a challenge to a financial operation that's actually corrupt and criminal, and you could be dangerous to them from the position of government that could rein them in through regulation, and then obviously outing these crimes through a deep dive with the DOJ and the FBI to basically make sure that the United States knew that the government was serious about purging corruption. What if those people just lobbied lobbed a bomb over the bow as basically a warning. And, downstream, it just ultimately led to more funding for the financial system to the Democrats, so that once again, it's he said, she said, everybody's all over the map except actually showing exactly what took place with these giant financial systems that can run huge crime operations and then ultimately are at the front end of the spigot of the Federal Reserve for free interest, and nobody's the wiser. That's the story of our country. So this in context to mainstream media versus what's happening on the internet, and I want to bring attention to two things that I've been going after for like the last 6 days consecutively, because the likes of Crystal Ball this morning was absolutely epic. My God, she did a monologue about Brian Stetler at CNN, and really, I'm going to call it pigs at the trough journalists that access journalism, pay to play. They're different variations, if you ask me, these types of mainstream journalists, right? They are to the journalism profession, which is no longer a profession, to what white shoe law firms are to the legal profession, I might argue, is no longer a profession with any integrity, because what they all do is they get close to the access of power. They all basically get to a point where it's like, we can be threatening to this operation, like a financial operation that is really, over and above everything, because finance is the lifeblood of capitalism, and all companies, no matter what size, big or small, depend on financing to be able to deal with labor and everything that comes with running businesses. And so therefore, they're at the apex of everybody's what has to happen. So if those financial entities are acting illegally through the stuff that I've been demonstrating for the last week and a half through hedge funds and private equity funds and all of the different scenarios that took place, for example, in the housing crisis, which was just a completely engineered fraud from the very bottom through the brokers, all the way up through all the different levels, all the way through the derivatives trades. And we're talking about trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in activity that go to fees that these banks charge, because that's the business model, because ultimately they're playing speculation a lot of the time with other people's money, and then the big answer to everything, and I'm going to say this in probably each and every one of these, because all roads lead to the Federal Reserve. When they pump 0% interest into the markets through the hedge funds and the asset managers and everybody that are controlling how everything gets financed, and then ultimately those entities are able to package securities into bonds that they then sell back to the United States government, well, then what you've got is fueling a Ponzi scheme, crime-ridden syndicate that is the ultimate face is Jamie Dimon at Chase. And so that brings me to, again, Russell Brand, who I'm trying to contact every single day, because Russell, I was just blown away by what you did this morning and everything that you said about, in response to people tagging you as right wing, and everything you said in that stream of consciousness about your humanity, about what you believe about civilization and your come from, and everything that constitutes who and what you are and why you do it every single day. And then you revealed to me two things that are a clue that I know you're paying attention to what I'm putting out there. And the first is that you have a crack team that does, filtering and detailed analysis, and I'm sure research and all of those other things that help you to do your monologues day in and day out. And you're a genius comedian, with an incredible gift of language, not to mention your mind operates at a million miles an hour, and you're able to connect all of these things that are important to you, and yet you're looking for corruption, and you do have gatekeepers, and here I am, Patrick Lovell, giving you what you are looking for, which is the largest engineered criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history that never ended. They double down, they triple down, they quadruple down because of what it is that I'm revealing to you. And then, of course, Crystal Ball's got it nailed with mainstream media and CNN and everything that those guys do, which is just exactly what they're claiming that Joe Rogan is guilty of, even though Joe Rogan, is this guy. I don't want to call him innocent anymore, because I found out some stuff yesterday that's a little bit disconcerting. I'm in this situation where I think Joe Rogan, has his brand, his platform. He does what he does, and I've been critical of what he's done in the past with guys like Alex Jones, and it's like, whatever. He's a platform that I can watch or not watch, that's my choice as a consumer, and I'm an adult and I actually have knowledge of how things work, so I can filter myself whether or not what those guys are talking about is something I want to actually listen to. That doesn't mean I want to cancel them, right? But I can understand if he is intentionally putting out misinformation on certain things, then he could be actually in a different space, and because that's not necessarily free speech. That then, of course, becomes propaganda. I don't know if that's what the intent is, but I can tell you that the aftermath of the N-word and the mashup and everybody, really becoming problematic for Spotify and canceling 70 episodes that had Joe Rogan mention the N-word, that he is he racist? I don't think he's racist, but someone made me aware yesterday that he's moving away from Twitter and winding up on a platform called Gather, which I'm not a part of. And I understand Steve Bannon is on Gather with 285,000 followers. Okay, Steve Bannon, I know a little thing about Steve Bannon and where Steve Bannon is going with the turning. And by the way, Russell, Steve Bannon is very aware of everything that I am talking about and trying to put in front of you because he came from Goldman Sachs. He knows the whole thing and how it works. And his whole story is that his dad got wiped out with the pensions, and they're trying to, reach the working class of America that got thrown out the door and kicked to the curb over 4 decades of neoliberalism and globalism. And, that's really at the center point of all of this because we've replaced the golden goose with financialization, but it led to a crime syndicate. And I'm the guy that has all of the information about how the 2008 great financial crisis was one giant engineered crime under the purview led by Jamie Dimon, by the way. All of the CEOs of Wall Street were involved with what we call control fraud. And then they created, through what is known as Gresham's dynamic, a way through perverse incentives to get everybody in the food chain to do their job, which was to lie, steal, and deceit their way to get all of these poorly underwritten loans that were going to blow up into the system that then guys like Goldman Sachs and others shorted, and that led to the story of the Big Short. There's so much more. There's so much more detail. But Crystal's in the right place. You're exactly in the right place, and you did reveal something that I know you're watching my videos to you because you know that I was highly critical of Tucker Carlson and his position on homelessness, which is another part of the story that's absolutely ridiculous. Tucker Carlson, Mr. Fox, and I think he reminds me of Leonardo DiCaprio and Django. I think that's who he is with Tyson Chicken and everything that those guys are about with the Mercers and the Kochs and Fox News and that whole right-wing circus that is equally and profoundly damaging to the Wall Street meritocracy. But that's the tug of war, man. It's like this white supremacy thing that was, I think, summarized by LBJ years ago. And actually, Matt Taibbi said it to you, but I think he got the wrong quote. The way it actually works is if you can convince the lowest rung white guy that he's higher than the highest rung black guy, you can pick his pockets all day. When I learned that 15, 20 years ago, I was like, what? So what that sort of thing gave me the sort of, I'm going to call it instinct that when the 2008 great financial collapse happened based on what I was living through and unfortunately this insane criminality that engendered the servicers and the bottom feeders and foreclosure mills, that was all a racket. And I'm going to finish up with this again, and this is to you, to you, Russell Brand, above all others. And Crystal Ball, I hope you're paying attention to this as well, because you guys all need to follow this, okay? The big lie with Donald Trump, as revealed through all of the things that Rachel Maddow has been doing recently on the documentation fraud for the election certifications and how that all manifests, didn't just pop into Donald Trump's head. They were doing it ad nauseum because the entire industry was in on liar's loans where they were documentation fabrication every step of the way to get loans approved. That's what underwriters were paid to do. Approve, approve, approve. How do I know? Because I talked to them on camera. I've got them in the con. We've got the evidence. Now, again, who is Patrick Lovell? Why is he screaming? Why is he trying to get to the gateholders of Russell Brand to try to get this immense truth to you guys, because you already have millions of viewers. It's what you're looking for, but it's what the entire system buried. I'm telling you right now, Blackstone owns Netflix. They're a majority shareholder. the likes of Chase and Goldman Sachs were doing the merger and acquisition this summer between Time Warner and Discovery. I think we're down to what, 5 major media entities, and they're all playing with ball with the guys that we expose. And again, I'm going to finish off with one last note here. Yesterday, it's revealed that there was a bust by the DOJ of this couple out of Hong Kong that was able to, I think, launder $3.5 billion in crypto, which is worth $4.7 billion now. I think those are the numbers. Just going off the top of my head, don't quote me on that, but it's close. But the point is that they said that there was the largest bust in DOJ history. Let's put that into perspective, my friends. Again, I'll say it over and over and over because this is fact. The Federal Reserve pumped $29 trillion through Federal Reserve Act 13.3 to all of the actors that blew up the world in 2008, 40% of which were apparently illegal based on the precepts of how these loans are supposed to operate. That's very granular in terms of the detail of what that reveals. But the same thing happened in 2019, Russell. It happened because of what appears to be the blow up based on repo loans and the terms that were not overnight anymore. They got extended to 40 days, and that was $11.9 trillion. So anyway you mark it up, we're looking at what, $42 trillion just from those two events alone, and that doesn't include the CARES Act. That doesn't include everything that led to the monumental housing appraisal run last year and all of the major entities and corporate interests that are buying up American homes left and right on the cheap because they get free money from the Federal Reserve to buy toxic assets that they hyper-evaluate, that they then sell back for 100% on the dollar to the Federal Reserve. Is that capitalism? My God, that is the biggest criminal racket in the history of the world. And Patrick Lovell, and I'm talking to you, gatekeepers, for Russell Brand, has the answers. Call me. Look at our stuff. You want credibility? Talk to Paul Pelletier of the DOJ. He was as senior as it gets. Same with Jesse Eisinger, who wrote the Chicken Shit Club, who's the lead editor at ProPublica. And he did the prescient work on all the billionaire tax write-offs. Not to mention, we work closely with Michael Hudson, the journalist, even though I also work with Michael Hudson, the economist. But Michael Hudson, the journalist, who's the lead editor for the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the guys that did the Panama Papers, the FinCEN files, and the Pandora Papers, which are the other side of what the con is. This is global. This is UK. This is City of London. This is all of the money from the sovereign wealth, Saudi sovereign wealth fund, and all of the other players, not to mention the drug cartels that are throwing money into American real estate, laundering it so that they are backstopped 100% on people's misery. And this is, I promise, the last part of this morning's tirade. Look, there are knowledgeable people that have been battling against this corruption in the courts for the last 10, 12 years. These people, I don't know how they have the stamina, but they fight and they fight and they fight because they know there's so much corruption going on in the courts, and they know the judges are definitely bearing them. They can prove it, but nobody's listening. So when Rachel Maddow is talking about documentation fabrication as it relates to the election certification, and that's a huge deal to her, Donald Trump is one guy. There were literally millions of illegal foreclosures, and it's happening right now. And that documentation stuff that's going on with the robo-signing right now with Chase, as it relates to this credit card stuff that happened during COVID that Senator Warren and Senator Brown are looking into at this very second, is like step and repeat of the robo-signing in the great financial crisis. And what does that mean? They just had people that were signing documents that they didn't have any knowledge of what was actually in the documents that would prove who had standing to foreclose on millions of Americans' homes. And to the gatekeepers at Russell Brand, my God, guys, there's at least 16 million filed foreclosures. There's 10 million homes that were foreclosed upon if you take even the most conservative numbers, which if you take the mean average of the American household, that's roughly 48 million people, at least, directly impacted by the great financial crisis, and many of them never recovered, and they wound up in the streets, and Tucker Carlson blames them, Russell. Don't look at Tucker Carlson as a good guy. He's not a good guy if he's against war. He did good stuff on private equity, but he went after the people on the streets, and he's saying that they want to be there by choice because they're drug addicts and that they're incentivized to be that way by the cities and the states, and that we're giving millions of dollars or billions probably to developers to give free housing when we should give that to small business loans and people that work, the American way, coming from you, Mr. Corporatist. Whatever, Tucker Carlson. Russell, you're looking in all the right places. You've got great instinct. You're a beautiful human being. We've got the facts that you could help us convey to millions of people around the world. And Russell, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I'm telling you, a lot of these people, that my point about the stuff in the courts is that they come out Trump supporters. You were talking to Matt Taibbi about populism. They come out Trump supporters, a lot of these guys, because they couldn't stand what Eric Holder did to them. Because they know Eric Holder buried them. And the Democrats did. And they did. They did. They covered for Jamie Dimon. Geithner said that the American people were foam on the runway for the crashing financial system. That's how they look at us. They look at us as expendable. I said in my first film, Forward 13, I'm not expendable. Chances you're not either. Russell, I'm begging you, brother, please talk to me. Once you get inside what I've got under the hood and I introduce you to all of these people that I've mentioned in this call and then some, you could literally lay out what, because you've got millions of viewers, and I wanted to do with Joe Rogan and actually Crystal Ball I wanted involved with this. We've got to generate a modern day Pecora hearing. And if you don't know who Pecora is, watch my stuff. I'll send you all the stuff. Back in the 30s, we had an investigation into what created the Great Depression. Instead of the United States going right-wing fascism or left-wing communism, we went to the integrity of the system. And we created Glass-Steagall. And we created the Securities and Exchange Commission because we had common sense and we actually were good guys that fought on the side of liberty and justice for all. That's how we kicked Hitler's ass. Thank God we had the Russians doing a big job for us with Stalin and the Germans and all of that. And I would never, ever want America not to understand. And I wish I could talk about the sacrifice of the Russians because that's what really defeated the Germans. And now I'm going off on a tangent. Guys, I know what I'm talking about. It's all happening now. Please call me. Let's talk. Namaste. How's that? Peace.
I just made a promise to myself that I was going to find the answers.